Hi everyone, it's Lennon, and today I want to ramble about poetry and actually specifically my poetry. I actually want to read some poetry for you guys. I've been posting a few poems here or there on Instagram, and I've gotten some good feedback, some good messages from them, and there's a lot that goes in. I feel like there's a lot that goes into my poetry, but to be honest, it's not. There's not. Inspiration comes from so many things and then nothing at all. I lead a very I lead a very lonely life. A I may be a mother, and that takes up a lot of my time, but there is so much time that I spend in solitude. Hours and hours and hours a day, not hearing anyone else's voice. And waiting for the night to come because sometimes the loneliness drowns out everything else that I was supposed to do that day. But some poems have come out and they've been really, really good. And then some poems come out due to anger or due to, like I said, my loneliness or those harsh emotions that we can't seem to do anything with, like sadness and guilt. Some of my poems have been direct reflections of those harsh emotions. Sometimes a poem will pop out randomly, not due to anything, and then other times it will take like reflectiveness. Like I'll sit down and I'm writing something, and then that'll make me think of something else, and then that's how a poem is rendered. A disclaimer that all of these poems are previously published, so I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer. But sometimes I'll stare off into space and a poem will pop out from just me staring into nothingness. Like this one. It's called The Storm. To the woman who stares out longingly through a beaded window, as the lightning flickers off her pale skin, cold and monotonous, so does her heart. The drumbeat of the thunder beckons, a gray hand held out warm and yielded. A severe desire shakes, bustling up her spine, uncoiling, swirling and twisting. The dance fierce within her feet, unconscious movement, rippling beneath, earthy. Finally, arms cast out, launching upwards, her wild unleashes, surrendering upon, revealing. That poem popped out out of nowhere because I was staring out the window. I love thunder. I love thunderstorms. It's always been my thing. Thunderstorms have been my thing forever. And I was staring out the window, and a really big thunderclap came, and I thought, holy shit, it's calling me. It's calling me out there. And then as I was that woman that stared longingly out there, I just wanted to dance in it, and the thunder beckoned me like a drum beat, and the clouds rolled in really fast like hands doing this. Come, Lennon. But sometimes poems pop out when nothing's happening. One time a poem popped out when I was listening to my refrigerator had made a weird noise, like when I guess the ice machine was whirring, and a poem popped out of that, and it's about loneliness actually. And it's this one. It's called That Would Be Crazy. The only friends I have are not imaginary. They're real. They speak to me. The first one, she's temperamental, nagging and sputtering about how I use her. She drips longingly for me, but I don't give back. 2, he stands strong. He hisses randomly. I don't use him. Well, rarely. He's cool, cold and hard. I sometimes give back to him. 3, he jumps constantly, his low rumble soft and tumbling. He smells nice. I just take from him. 4, she sucks when I feel up to it. She glides gracefully like an assassin, killing everything in her path. If I give, she'll suck me dry. Figured it out? Well, if you had, that would be crazy. And that poem came from a severe lonely day I was having, where it seemed like my only friends were my household appliances. The vacuum, the refrigerator, the dryer that jumbles about, how I use them and how I take from them. They had become my friends inside loneliness. That's pretty sad. Sometimes poetry cannot be interpreted. I feel like there's a philosophy to poetry, because what I may write, it comes out like a diary entry, and it's not going to make sense to the next person that's reading this, right? Sometimes it will. Sometimes it will be relatable. And sometimes an emotion like love will be prominent. But there's a fine line between love and hate. Like this angry love poem that I wrote. It's called Lust. Endorphins galore. Why does the high have to end? Why do I have to come down? Why can't I stay on the pedestal? Sure, there's no lust like love, but what about love without lust? Why can't you get hard just looking at me? Why can't I feel a quivering with your soft caress? Where is the red hot passion? Why don't you know what my calves smell like? Why do we not make out at the sink with you behind me? Why can't I remember if your palms have calluses? In lust, in vitality, to rouse, to be worshipped. Do you feel it? Experience it? Neither do I. That was so angry, because there was, of course, you get through periods of dry spells, right? Where you love someone, maybe you're in a relationship, you love them, but there's no lust. It's like, how the hell do you drive that shit without passion? And I was getting angry. It's like nothing was working, that type of a thing. And that poem popped out, and it sounds kind of angry, it sounds like there's nothing happening. Mostly I'll say that isolation plays a huge role in my poetry. Not necessarily love, not necessarily lust, but the isolation I sometimes feel, a lot of my poetry comes from that, like this one, and it's called Isolation. In isolation, I feel. In isolation, I breathe. My mind is disengaged. My mind's in quarantine. What day is it? What time is it? Does it even matter now? Maybe, maybe not. Mind circling like a cyclone, no regard if the light bulb is on. It seems to be muddled, no clarity to be had, but maybe going within will expand during this lock-in. Man, I can feel the ice cubes on that one. I was saying before about harsh emotions. These emotions that are at play in my day-to-day life, like loneliness, contentment, just plain contentment, sadness, they all play a part. And for sometimes I feel myself wearing down, wearing thin, getting worn down, like erosion. And so I wrote this poem because of that feeling. It's called Rustin. I'm rusting. This beautiful temple, now an oxidized mess. Loneliness waters me, too much water, but I do not drown. Just Rustin, this beautiful temple, this arcane alchemy, inevitable. For the loneliness continues to water me as I lay Rustin. It just feels like That poem came in a time where I was so lonely that I felt it chipping away at me. And it took its toll for sure. Poetry for me is a way, like I said before, of like diary entries. There's a sense of expression with them too, a way to get out the sludge that I want to get out to I can like maybe gain some clarity from it. And so sometimes poetry will come out from me just trying to get a grip with what I'm actually going through or feeling in the moment, not necessarily something that I hold on to on a day-to-day basis. Just, quick something like this one. It's called Am I Too Wild? Am I too wild for this world? My hair wild, my soul wild, my fingers wild, my imagination wild. Am I too wild for this world? This world filled with wildflowers, filled with folklore, filled with regeneration. Am I too wild for this world? This world filled with anguish, this world filled with pain, filled with metal. Is this world wild for me? For me to embrace, for me to honor, for me to cherish? As I am wild, so is this earth. For we are one, for we are free, for we are wild. It was an epiphany poem. I was laying out in the grass in my yard, and I just realized that my heartbeat was matching the wind and the way the grass was moving, and it was such a profound epiphany that myself and the earth were like mirroring one another, that I thought, shit, as wild as I am and as crazy as my mind can go, so too is the earth. How crazy is that? Music may play a role. I listen to a lot of instrumental music, aside from, like, I'm a rocker girl, so I listen to a lot of, like, hard rock, old hard rock, I guess you could say. Five Finger Death Punch and Falling in Reverse and Atreyu, Seven Dust, Shaman's Harvest, Black Veil Brides. That kind of shit is like my norm, right? But then when I need to come back, I listen to instrumental music, vibrational music. And there's this guy that makes these cello compositions that I just fucking love. And one time I was listening to a composition that he made that's named Desolation. And a poem just popped out as I had my headphones in. I wasn't doing anything. I had to run and get paper. And I'm going to leave the link for you to go watch that and listen to Desolation, just because it's like one of his best, in my opinion. So this poem popped out of listening to that particular poem that composition that he made. How can you bleed if you're empty? The beginning soft, push and pull. The bow suddenly weaves and heaves, cutting into flesh right at center. Low white noise as the arrow barely moves, pulling in again, slight twang with a few fingers. Flicks of the wrist and mine are cut wide open. Hammer-on glides across my neck. The change is in. Stomps on and on, my already battered body. The ending calls, I don't want to go. The last few notes beckon me, like the light they tell you about. When the chord dies out, as do I, severely wounded, spent. I think that day, that composition was rendering me immobile almost. It there was I was almost using the composition. I was embodying the composition, and it was cutting me. And it was like, at the end, it was one of those emotional turmoils that you go through, and you're sitting there like, like that type of shit that comes with listening to really, really good music. Sometimes my paganism will have something to do with my poetry. Like my witchiness will come out, and a poem will pop out from there as well. And this was actually inspired by something I saw on Instagram. And it's about magic, right? Magic with a K. So it's called Magic to Me. Magic to me is speaking aside. Loud and unheard, nothing to hide. Soft and twinkling, a feeling inside. Leaves me content and refuses to hide. As a tune comes crashing like high tide, as a candle flame flickers, with intention I provide, whether by a being you have deified, or an archetype you have purified. Magic to me is like I am unified with all magic makers, never needing to be verified. Now, those are just some of the poems that I wanted to read to you and ramble about how I may get inspired to write, and to how my poems may have come about. And usually nothing special happens. I just have to make sure there's a notebook nearby. So, but I want to leave you with something really cool. I want to leave you with some of my favorite poets that really inspire me. To give y'all some creative juice as well. Go and find these poets, if you will. Sylvia Plath, Bukowski, yes sir. Nikita Gill, she is like the best modern poet I know. I mean, some of hers are just so fucking dark, you just want to bathe in the molasses. That is her poetry. Anyway, Atticus, Goethe, Rainer Wilkes, Tennyson, Emerson, Dickinson, and another modern poet that I've been reading a lot lately. She's like a witchy pagan. She writes a lot of witchy poets. Is Theodora Goss. And let me tell you something. She can write some motherfucking poetry. So anyway, those are just a few. I read a lot of poetry. Those are just a few that have been inspiring me lately. And I always tend to go back to them for more inspiration. So please go check some of their shit out. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments what you thought of some of my poems. And like I said, a lot of these are published elsewhere. So I'm not really afraid of them ending up somewhere. And if you want to see them written down, some of them are on my Pinterest page, which I will leave the handle below. And I hope to see everyone again, because y'all know that I'll be back to share some more of my poetry. Much love.